Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast, part 2 of our conversation with Rich Donnelly, former Major League Baseball coach, is brought to you by Compassion International. $38 a month. You make a difference in a child's life, sponsoring them through Compassion International. $38. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum. Release a child from poverty by sponsoring them. You provide food, education, medical care, vocational training, all done in the name of Jesus. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum and sponsor a child today. It's just $38, and that difference will impact a child forever. Compassion.com/sportspectrum. Today's guest on the podcast is Rich Donnelly. This is part 2 of our conversation with Rich, the former Major League Baseball coach. 48 seasons in professional baseball as a player and coach, 25 years in the majors. Rich was a part of the 1997 Marlins team that won the World Series. And that World Series championship, that Game 7 victory, that last hit by Craig Counsell, the walk-off, is what spurned on the story of The Chicken Runs at Midnight, which is the new book out by Tom Friend, the ESPN reporter, with the foreword by Tim Kirkshin, released through Zondervan. But this story is Rich Donnelly's story, this book, The Chicken Runs at Midnight. In part 1, go back and listen to part 1 if you haven't, by the way. But in part 1, we talk about what The Chicken Runs at Midnight is and where that story came from and how the Marlins winning the World Series in 1997 was literally the chicken running at midnight. It's an amazing story of how Rich sort of walks through this journey of his daughter Amy getting a brain tumor and ending up passing away at such a young age as a teenager, 18, 19 years old. And Amy coined the phrase, the chicken runs at midnight, which was some random phrase that she just came up with. And then the chicken runs at midnight comes to life through the 1997 World Series, which again, go back to part 1 from yesterday and hear that story. In part 2, our conversation today, which for Rich, that story alone obviously is worth a book. That's why the book is called The Chicken Runs at Midnight, which I'm holding in my hand right now, by the way. But there's way more to Rich's story that's happened after the chicken ran at midnight back in 1997. And I wanted to talk to Rich about that as well and about how God is working through him. This man has been able to maintain a faith in God and a positive outlook on life, overcoming incredible circumstances. I mean, in part 1, you heard that he lost his brother. His brother passed away when he was 28, when Rich was just a young boy. And he lost his daughter Amy at 19 years old. Well, in part 2, we hear about more struggles that Rich has gone through, specifically with his own health, and then his son Mike, and something happening earlier this year in 2018 with Mike, and then his daughters Leanne and Tiffany, and what they went through being in, we'll just say they were in attendance, if you will, at a concert in Las Vegas when the shootings, if you remember back in 2017, took place in 2017. And let's just say it gets crazier is what it does. It really does with Rich's story. And so let's just get to part 2. Listen to it. Be encouraged by Rich, because his faith is strong and his just purpose, you can tell, of staying alive and wanting to consistently be positive and impact other people's lives for the Lord is inspirational, especially with what he's gone through. So take a listen. Here's part 2 of our conversation with Rich Donnelly, The Chicken Runs at Midnight. And Rich, of course, the former Major League Baseball coach, here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Take a listen. Rich, how did Amy's death affect your faith after everything was done? Like after she had passed on and you had, the chicken runs at midnight and you bury her. Tell me about, did your faith strengthen, or did it kind of go backwards and then kind of come back full circle? Like what was that like for you with your faith being strengthened in the Lord?
Well, it was like she was actually, I felt this, and since she has passed away, I talk with her every day. Yeah. People see me walking down the street talking, they think, well, what's wrong with him? And I was thinking, Amy, you finally got through to me. you want me to go back and be the way I was when I was, when you were 1, 2, 3 years old, when I was a good father, a good husband, funny guy, just did everything right. That's what you want me to do. I'm going to try my best to go back and be that way. And so I had faith. I lost it, but I still knew that was the way to go. But it's like somebody who's trying to diet, and somebody puts a big piece of chocolate cake in front of them, and they go, "Yeah, I know I shouldn't eat this, but I'm going to go ahead and eat it anyway." Well, but that was me. I knew the right way to do stuff, but I'm going to do the other way because this is more pleasurable. This suits my needs, and I'll worry about the results later. And after she passed away, it's like I felt a sense of warmth that she got me back into the habit of being a better person, being a better father to the rest of my kids, my 7 other kids, and to be a better husband and to be a better person to all people. Amy, her last 9 months, this is a crazy story. I have pictures of her before she contacted a brain tumor, and she has a smile like mine. It's like a 3/4 smile, we call it. We don't smile nice in pictures. After she got the brain tumor, I have about 30 pictures of her. Every one of those pictures, she's smiling ear to ear. It was like she was relieved that everything was fine. And I said that 9 months, she was so concerned about everybody else and how they were going to be, not herself. Never once did she say, "Poor me, why me? Why am I 17?" She had a ball her last 9 months. And what I say in all my speeches that I give around the country, I go, she wanted to be a teacher. And everybody says, "Oh, that's too bad. She didn't get to be a teacher." And I went, wait a minute. No.
Yeah.
She was the best teacher I ever had. In those 9 months, she taught me how to live, and she taught me how to die.
That's powerful. Can you share the story too? The book documents this, and you actually put the letter in there that she wrote to you, kind of one of her last wishes with the terminally ill. I can't say that. I'm going to repeat this now because I'm taping it.
Yeah.
Rich, can you tell me the story of the letter? One of Amy's last wishes was regarding a red wagon and helping out terminally ill kids. Can you share us that story?
Yes, at Children's Hospital in Dallas, there were 17 kids in the terminally ill unit, and she was the oldest one. All the rest of them, of course, were very young. And I went, we'd visit her all the time, and they had this one wagon. And about twice a day, you'd see kids 3-4 times a day, this wagon would go up and down a hall, going over to the window to overlook the skyline of Dallas. And they would put the kids, 3 or 4 of them, in the wagon, and then the other kids would have to wait their turn, and they'd go down the window and wait a half hour and look how pretty the lights are, blah, blah, blah. And when Amy passed away, I went back in her room, and the girl says, "Why don't you, there's some stuff, some personal items in her desk." So I opened up her drawer, and I saw an envelope with my name on it, Dad. And there was something in it. I opened it up, and it was a note, a letter, and a check. And here's what it said. It said, "Dear Dad, please take this check and go buy a wagon for each one of those kids so they won't have to wait to go down the hall." That just, I sat there for probably an hour and bawled my eyes out. She's dying. She's getting chemo. And what she's worried about? She's worried about there's not enough wagons in the terminally ill unit. So when I say she taught me how to live and taught me how to die, even in my life today, I try. I can't be like Amy. I'm not strong enough. I can't be strong enough as she was. I just can't. She was unbelievable. She's going to die. She's 17, prime of her life. She knows it. And all she's concerned about is other people. And she's made me so aware of other people in my life that I can say I'm ashamed that I can't live up to her. But I try every day. I try every day to achieve it.
And then, of course, after that, everything's fine, everything's better. You go on to live a great life, and no other tragedy, and nothing else happens to you, right?
So far,
the story isn't even beginning yet. It's
it ain't
amazing.
even started yet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us about, the book really doesn't spend a ton of time on the sort of aftermath of you. You end up with colon cancer. Your daughters end up involved in a shooting that I want to talk about that in a second. Your son, has a tragedy that happens as well. Can you just take us through a little bit of what's going on there, and we can kind of go a little deeper as we see fit? Just about you going. I guess start with the contracting colon cancer yourself, right?
Yeah, I go get a colonoscopy. My good friend Dr. Dave Medich. He was a guard on the football team when Woody Hayes punched that guy back in the day.
Sure, yeah.
And Dave played my yard. And he said, "You ought to get a colonoscopy, Rich. You're about 60-some years old. You should get it." And I went, I'm in perfect shape. I'm a world-class racquetball player. I'm good. Right. So I have one, and Roberta comes in the waiting room, and she's crying. And Roberta doesn't cry at anything. And I said, "What is going on? What are you crying about?" She says, "They found a grapefruit-sized tumor in your stomach. And it's malignant." And I'm thinking my life is over. And anyway, Dr. Medich saves my life. He operates, he removes the colon, reattaches my colon, and basically he saved my life. At the same time, during that time, I weigh about almost 200 pounds. I lost about 40 pounds. And I'm thinking all during this time about Amy and how she handled it. And I'm trying like heck every day. I mean, I got my stomach opened up. I was out for, 4 or 5 months. I didn't even leave my chair hardly except to go to the restroom. And I'm thinking, I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I'm not going to say why me. I'm not going to blame God. Yeah. I'm going to be Amy to get through this. I'm going to draw on her strength to get through this. And I did. And doctor says you're going to come back healthy as ever. You're going to be playing golf, racquetball. And after a year or two, I did. I was back and got back into baseball coaching. And then, boom, I find out they did a blood count, and I got prostate cancer. So they shot some seeds in me. And again, I thought my life was over. But again, through all these illnesses, all I could think of was Amy, how she handled that last 9 months. And that gave me strength to get through it.
Wow. You, the Amy story obviously is coming back to help you get through it, but you're in your 60s here at this point. Is this something that, did it get to the point where you had to start thinking, okay, this might be the end, or are you able to stay positive and be like, nope, we're going to fight this thing and we're going to beat it?
Well, I'm trying to fight it. Meanwhile, I've lost 40 pounds. I look like Barney Fife. My son Bubba come over to visit me one night, Amy's older brother, and he walked in the door, saw me, started crying, and he just did a 360 and walked right back out the door. And he says, "I love you." And I thought it was over. And next day, I told my wife, I says, "There's a funeral home right across from where we live," and I said, "You better go over there and start making arrangements." And I was trying to be tough. But it's tough. It's so tough. And I resort back to Amy. I said, what would she have done? Yeah. And I prayed every day to her, help me get through this. Help me just handle this. Help me not, I've never wanted people to feel sorry for me, anything I ever did. And now everybody was feeling sorry for me. I didn't want that. So it helped me a lot to get through that.
And then take us through, it touches briefly in the book, but October 1st of 2017, it's a year ago. We're taping this early October of 2018. So it's a year ago. And that Las Vegas shooting that was just such a tragedy and so horrific to watch happens. And somehow your daughters are involved in being, I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing, obviously. No. It's amazing to me of this whole thing. Your daughters are involved in the shooting. Tell us what happened there.
Well, it's last year in October, and my wife and I are in bed, and the phone rings at about 3 a.m, which it's never good. Never good, yeah. Never good. So I hear her going, okay, Are they okay? Okay. And I goes, what happened? She goes, there was a shooting in Vegas, but everything's okay. And that's all she said to me. And then I rolled over and I went, well, why would somebody call me? She says, the girls are in Las Vegas. And I said, well, thank God they're not at that concert. And my wife goes, they didn't tell you, but they are.
Oh, wow.
Then I turn on TV at 4 a.m. and see what's going on. And I'm going, oh, my God. So I pick up Leanne. Leanne's she's a beautiful little girl after her mother. And we call her Beans because she's so little. And I called Beans on the phone. I couldn't get through. The phone would not ring. It says unable to connect. Now I'm worried. And my wife, Roberta, she's trying to get a hold of Tiffany, my other daughter. Can't get through. Now I get up at 4 a.m. I'm calling for 5, 6, 7 hours. We're calling their husbands, our son-in-laws, nothing. Finally, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a phone call. I didn't recognize the number, but it said Las Vegas, and I got chills. And I picked it up, and it was Beans, and she said, Dad, I'm okay. And I just said, are you okay, honey? And where's Tiffany? She goes, I don't know. We got separated. And I didn't even know what happened. And then she says, I got to tell you what happened, Dad. She goes, the lady in front of us got shot in the face, and we took our blouses off, made tourniquets, put them around her neck, and laid on top of her for 15 minutes of shooting, and until the paramedics came. And I said, why didn't you run? She goes, well, Dad, I just couldn't. I couldn't leave that lady there. And I said, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die, but I'm not leaving her. So Tiffany and Leanne in the mayhem got separated. They crawled out of there. Tiffany went to one hotel lobby, not her hotel. In fact, they were staying at the Mandalay where the shooter was. Wow. And they didn't even know what happened. So make a long story short, reunited with them about 5 o'clock that night. She told me the whole story. And then miraculously, Leanne got on Facebook about 2 days later after they were allowed back in their hotel room. In fact, they were staying one floor below where that nut was shooting. Wow. And they said they put it on Facebook that, please, here's my face. I helped you when you got shot. If you recognize me, call me. Well, guess what? Natalie Grumman is the girl. She called. Her husband called. She got shot in the face, paralyzed. Just saw Natalie on TV. They interviewed her yesterday. They interviewed her while I'm talking to Beans.
On the anniversary of the shooting.
I'm looking at there's Natalie. They're interviewing her. She had 8 surgeries. She's doing fine. She was on a feeding tube for like 7 months. She's called me about 4 times and says, your daughter saved my life. And wow, I'm thinking, I mean, again, there's no rehearsal. There's no practice. There's no book that tells you what to do when this happens. And they laid on top of Natalie for 15 minutes. It's a lot of shooting. Yeah, and thinking that they might be shot. And it didn't matter. They weren't going to leave her. And now here comes another reminder of what we should be in life. You were going to save your life to save someone else's. There's no higher call.
Yeah, the Bible says, greater love shows no end than when you lay down your life for someone else, right?
And I'm overwhelmed by what my daughters did. I'm going.
Go ahead,
I'm going. I got 3 wonderful daughters who gave their lives up or were going to give their lives up. All they thought about was others. I take a deep breath and so thankful for them. Talk with Natalie all the time. And we're just so blessed, and we're going along, and now we think, oh, boy, there's another hurdle we just got over, not knowing what was ahead.
Let me ask you about the shooting for a second, then we'll talk about the last hurdle, we hope, in this story. Are they able to talk about it, Leanne and Tiffany, I guess is the question I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are so shocked and trauma. Even my brother, stepbrother was in the Afghanistan war, and that's a different thing, right? And he fought and tried to find up, bin Laden and that whole thing in Afghanistan. He can't talk about it. I've asked him a couple times, what was it like? And he just can't. this is much different, obviously, but not maybe in the terms of the trauma and what was experienced. Are they able to kind of have conversations about it?
Well, they have flashbacks. Sometimes the phone rings at night, and I hear my wife and Leanne and Tiffany talking, and they're just saying, Mom, it was so horrible. It was so horrible.
Yeah.
And they do have some flashbacks, but they're doing better. They talk to Natalie, the girl, they talk to her a lot. And it's just something that they can't believe it happens, like surreal. It's like a movie. You watch it on TV, and you think, geez, that's something that'll never happen to me. And guess what? All of a sudden, you're right in the middle of it.
Did their faith get impacted at all through this? I know your faith is obviously important, but was their faith? I mean, I got to imagine when you go through something like that, you start having a lot of thoughts about, God and faith and things like that.
I think, Jace, it's funny. Faith is in a different way sometimes. It makes you a better person. It doesn't make you like start running to church every day,
Sure.
But it makes you a better person for the future. And I think that's part of what faith is about, to be a good person, to put yourself third behind God and your fellow man. Yep. In fact, that's one of the chapters in the book, I Am Third. We put ourselves behind God, behind our fellow man. And I think when that happened to Tiffany, Leanne, they got a better appreciation, or even more appreciation, on how to be a better person. And I mean, they put themselves third, fourth, fifth in that situation. But after that happened, in dealing with life, I think it made them get a better appreciation of how you should treat people in life. I mean, they did it in a tremendous, tragic situation, which was so hard to do. And they're thinking, hey, if we did this in this situation, how much easier is it to do in your daily life?
And then can you just share the last thing that happened? It was recently, obviously earlier this year, January 2018, and your son, Mike, and what transpired there.
Yeah, Mike was our second son, and Mike was about 40 years old. He's had some troubles in his life. I always tell people Mike was the smartest kid in our family, the most talented kid in our family. He was a kicker, field goal kicker in high school and college, got the best grades. Everything was easy, best sense of humor, funniest kid. Everybody wanted to be around him, but he got involved in drugs, and he had a rough life. But Mike would always do stuff for other people in his whole life, but he still had a tough life. Well, on January 7th, Tim, I get a phone call again, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And he said, Dad, and he paused and he started crying. And I said, what's the matter? And he said, Mike was killed. And I thought, well, someone shot him. He got in a drug deal, something, whatever. I says, tell me what happened. He said, Dad, he was driving home. He said, first of all, Dad, at Christmas, he was doing real well. He was treating people right. He was coming back on the right track. And he was driving home on the night of the January 7th. And he was on a 2-lane road in Dallas, and it was midnight. And he looked up ahead, and he saw people pushing an SUV across the road, pushing it. They got out of the car. It was a girl. There was a guy, of course, in his driver's seat who had been in an accident, and his car was disabled. So the girl and the guy were helping him push. Well, Mike pulled over and says, what happened? Well, it was a wreck. This guy can't start his car, so we're pushing it across the highway. So there was a girl. Her name was Lindsay Longoria, and her boyfriend. And Mike got on the left side and behind. They started pushing. And all of a sudden, a flash of light came. Car came around the bend, didn't see him. Mike grabbed Lindsay by the collar and flung her down. Her leg went up and got hit. Mike shielded her, and Mike was hit flush at 65 miles an hour and killed instantly. And it's funny that when Tim told me that, all the things that Mike did in his life that were bad were erased. He told me, Dad, Mike saved this girl's life by shielding, and then he got hit. And about an hour later, I don't know how, but there was something on Facebook. Tim sent it to me, and it was a message. said, "This is Lindsay Longoria. I've just been in a wreck. A kid saved my life. I don't even know him. All I saw was his big brown eyes when he was laying there. And I've known him for 30 seconds, and he saved my life. I have twin boys, and I want to reach out to this kid's father. And can you possibly put me in touch with him?" Well, yes, I got in touch with Lindsay. She called me. She said, "Mr. Donnelly, you can't believe what your son did." She says, "He flung me down. My leg went up in the air. I broke my lower leg, but he was killed, saving my life. He's my hero to my twin boys. They're always going to know about him." And she went into the highway patrol about a week later, and she bought a 24-hour illuminated cross, which she placed on the highway, which is still there today. And then, good things come out of tragedy sometimes. And she called me about a month ago, and she says, "Rich, I just want to ask you something." And I said, "Yeah, Lindsay, what is it?" Because I've talked to her a lot, and she's had guilt problems and flashbacks. And she says, "I'm pregnant, and I'm going to have a baby the first week of November. And I want to call and ask you, with your permission, if I could name my son Michael Donnelly Longoria."
Wow.
And I said, "Of course." I've said through all this, I've gained another daughter, and I'm going to gain another grandson. And again, in the book, this is what it's all about. It's about reacting to things that happen in your life and push forward. And like I say in the book, we go everywhere. We go from good to bad to bad to good, all over the place.
Yeah.
But I think people can relate to it because it's a story of just a normal kid born in Steubenville, Ohio, that had dreams. And part of my dreams was to have a beautiful wife, a 2-car garage, and 3 or 4 kids. And that's what I had. And be in the big leagues. I had everything that I ever dreamt about. And then I screwed it all up, and it was all basically taken away. And then, through the grace of God, you bounce back, and so many good things have happened I can't even tell you. I had a guy call me from Miami the other day. He said, "Rich, I read your story about Chicken Runs at Midnight. I was going to jump off a hotel and kill myself. And I read the book, and I read about Amy and thought, no, I'm not doing it. So your daughter saved my life." And I get phone calls like that all the time, and I'm stunned. That's why I think this book is going to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, you write in the back of the book, because you kind of had a little sort of afterword that you were able to write, and you said, "If my faith was at 100% before, and it was, it's even more now. I believe in the magic of the Chicken Runs at Midnight, and I hope you will spread the magic with me. I pray that everyone who reads this book will pass it on." It's amazing how stories, and tragedies can affect, because we can either run from God or we can run to God and allow the story to still have some kind of positive outcome. And I don't know how you're able to even write a book or talk about these, because it's more than one story. It's more than Amy as much as it is Amy. And it starts with her with the Chicken Runs at Midnight. And then it's everything that's happened, even just in the last year for you. So let's close with this. And I really appreciate your time, Rich, sharing your story. What have you been learning from God during this season of life? Because there's so much happening, and that has happened to you. And then yet you're able to press on, and you're able to still be positive and still find the hope that's found, quite frankly, it's found in God, but the hope that's found through these stories and sharing them. So what are you learning from God right now?
Well, you know what? In our life, Jace, there's so much talk and so few action. And I always tell people I have the most wonderful wife in the world, and she has showed me she not only reads the Bible, she interprets the Bible. She's like she teaches the Bible to pastors. I mean, she's so good.
That's awesome.
And I tell people all the time, she's never told me, "Rich, you ought to do this. Rich, you ought to do this. Rich, you ought to act this way." And Amy never told me that. And my daughters never told me that. And Mike never told me that. But by their example of what they do tells me everything about how to be. And when people show you, it's better than telling you. It's just like in sports. The teams that do good and win, They show you. All coaches go, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do. No, the ones that do it, you're more affected by. So with all this stuff that's happened in my life, here's what I think I should do. And I'm talking to myself. And I go, I'm going to try to show other people by my example what to do. Be more charitable. Be more caring. Be more thoughtful. That will affect people in a more positive way than telling people, you should do this. You should do this. No, go out and do something that people go, wow, he did that. Maybe I can do that. And I've learned by example from my kids, from my wife, why can't I do that? Everybody talks. Example is the Lord went and preached, but the way he did everything on earth, if you read the Bible, his example made more effect than what he actually said.
Absolutely.
And then he went out. I said the ultimate sacrifice. He gave his life on the cross. I mean, how much better can you get? That example of that is much more powerful than anything he ever said. And he said a lot of good stuff, but it resonates with people that's what he did. And if you look at every church, what's on the wall? A picture of Jesus on a crucifix. What's on everything you see? Medals there. Because that example had more effect on anybody than anybody else. And I'm hoping someday I could do half the examples that my kids and my wife did to me.
He is Rich Donnelly, and man, this has been an amazing journey, amazing conversation. Rich, thank you for being so transparent and just sharing your story. The book is called The Chicken Runs at Midnight, which I don't even think it's just a book. I think it's a way of life in a lot of ways, especially for Rich Donnelly. Tom Friend, a longtime ESPN writer, was the author of the book. It's a daughter's message from heaven that changed a father's heart and won a World Series. I cannot highly recommend this book enough. This is a must read. It goes much deeper into the life, into the story of Rich, especially with his daughter Amy, than we could have gotten here on the podcast. And Rich, listen, I wish you nothing but the best. Thanks for continuing to be a positive light and continue spreading the good news, my friend. I really appreciate you joining us here and wish you nothing but the best.
Well, thank you. I want to, before I go, Tom Friend says, please mention this, that people can get it. All they have to do is type in small letters with no space, The Chicken Runs at Midnight .online, and they can purchase the book online. So it's all small letters, no spacing, The Chicken Runs at Midnight .online. The book is out today, plus it's in all the stores, and we hope that a lot of people get it, and hopefully it'll have some positive effect on people.
Oh, I know it will, and we'll definitely link to the book on our website, and I'll mention the website again when we finish here. But thank you so much again, Rich, and continued best wishes to you.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Wow. That's the incredible story of Rich Donnelly, and there's a lot there. That was part 2 of our conversation with Rich, and of course, go back and listen to part 1 if you haven't already. His story is powerful. It really is. And it's, I love doing this podcast, and I say it a lot, that story is powerful. This story is powerful. But at the same time, I can't say that about every interview. Every interview is great in my eyes because everybody has a story, but not everyone has a story like Rich Donnelly, and Rich's story is incredible. It really is. The book is called The Chicken Runs at Midnight. Again, you can get it everywhere books are sold. It's out now. Zondervan published it, and it's written by Tom Friend. So it's not an autobiography per se. So if you look up Rich Donnelly, you'll probably find it on the internet, but Rich didn't write the book. Tom Friend, actually, former ESPN or current ESPN writer, I should say, is the one who wrote the book. And it says, The Chicken Runs at Midnight, a daughter's message from heaven that changed a father's heart and won a World Series. It's a great read. I've read through it. It's a wonderful book, very in-depth, very inspirational. And again, as you heard in part 2, Rich is even more than The Chicken Runs at Midnight, although that'll obviously go to his grave with him forever. But part 2 of our conversation was about the even more crazy things that he's gone through with his own health, which we'll continue to pray for, with the colon cancer. Certainly his daughters being present at the Vegas shooting back in 2017 and how they were able to save a life and overcome what was just a horrible situation. And then the tragedy strikes again, and he loses his son, Mike, in January of this year. And so, again, I don't know how people can go through life with tragedy without a faith. That's one thing that I've always thought about and wondered. I've had a faith now for about, I guess, 17, 18 years. And, most of my losses in my life that I've experienced, I'm very fortunate not to have many, but the few that I have gone through, the very close people in my life, if I didn't have a faith, I would not be able to, I think, walk through those in a way otherwise where, where I could come out on the other end positive or having hope of some semblance. And when you listen to Rich, you hear a man who still has a lot of hope and a lot of purpose. He loses 2 of his children and contracts colon cancer, and his brother passes away when he's a little boy. And I think all of that has obviously made him into a stronger person. So I wish Rich nothing but the best, and let's all continue to pray for him and pray for this book, that it makes an impact, really, that he can kind of go around and tell his story and point people back to God, which is really why we do this podcast, to point people back to Jesus Christ. That's the goal here. Not to get a bunch of numbers and downloads, and the podcast is doing wonderful, by the way, and a lot of people are listening to it. But our end goal here is not to make money or to get a high count of downloads, which would be great if that happens. But it's to point people back to the Lord and to encourage you listening to enter into a relationship with Jesus. That's what it's about. So thank you for listening to this episode. We really do appreciate you tuning in and spending time listening to our stories of sports and faith. You can find all of our content over at sportspectrum.com. Every single piece of content we produce, videos, articles, daily devotionals every morning at 6 a.m. It's all available for free on our website at sportspectrum.com. And we also want to thank our sponsors, Compassion International. If you go check them out, compassion.com/sportspectrum, you can make a difference in a child's life by sponsoring them, $38 a month through Compassion International. Again, that URL, that website, compassion.com/sportspectrum, food, education, medical care, vocational training. That's where your money goes, $38. And make a connection. You release a child from poverty and make a connection with them that will truly change their lives forever. Compassion.com/sportspectrum. Sponsor a child today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.